we'll put that up so anybody that misses the meeting like Lisa can kind of watch it and catch up on where we are. So I added a new check-in activity, which is just 2 minutes of mindfulness to close our eyes, connect with ourselves, and we just take a deep breath to disconnect from the tasks we've been doing, and just connect into your own feelings, into your body. Take some deep breaths, maybe be aware of what it feels like to take in those breaths. And just notice the sensations in your body, and we'll just have about 1.5 minutes for doing that. And taking a few more deep breaths, let them out, and slowly come back to our group here. And so what we want to do is go around to check in, how are we doing? And then when we end, share a feeling, in emotion, like we felt into our bodies, and what is a feeling that you have, and turn it into a physical emotion. And we're going to do a mirroring exercise around that. So I'll demonstrate it. Let's see, I can demonstrate. For me, feeling a little anxious because I really want to make sure that we're effective in the group. I feel a little concerned that somebody dropped out, so I'm feeling a little bit of anxiety around that. And so this is the physical motion. If you want to mirror it, just kind of mirror the. If you want to try it too, do the same thing to give a mirroring. Yeah, so a little anxiety and also excitement, about the development of the trainings. There's been a lot of new material, so I'm feeling excited about that too. Anxiety and excitement. So Dimitra, would you like to share? Check in?
Yeah, it's Dimitra.
Dimitra.
Just says D, or if
Mitra.
Just Mimi is
Mimi.
Just...
Okay, I'm gonna write that down.
So Mimi, that's it. So I would say that once I practice yoga twice a week, and I had my session today just a couple of hours ago, and this little exercise reminded me of the things that the meditation exercises we practice there. And so I would say that this is the motion that could just describe how I felt. It's nice. Of course, it's not very, it's not that effective when you sit on your desk. However, it's just better than being in extreme tension. So I think it has some benefits. It still has some benefits, yes.
Okay, so can we mirror that for you? So we kind of shared kind of attunement.
Yes.
Did we get it?
Absolutely, thank you.
Ingrid?
I guess I'm feeling a little, some anxiety. Before, I definitely am calmer now compared to before we did the meditation or the 2-minute, which I really like doing that because it does help me get calm and a little bit more centered. And we took our 8-year-old grandson to a week overnight camp yesterday, and it was kind of hard because it was the first time we took him, and he had expressed that he was feeling kind of scared about going for the first time. And on our way up there, he said, "I'm burping out butterflies." The butterflies in my stomach, they're coming out through a burp. And so that was the way he was kind of easing his anxiety. And so, and I can feel some, I think about him, like, is he doing okay? And that kind of thing. But so I guess my feeling is that because I'm thinking of the butterfly too, it's more like, I can't figure out how to do a butterfly, but something like, he called it the butterfly fluttering in his stomach.
Do we have it?
Yes, you have it.
Okay.
Okay, well, that was fun. We've been, as we go through the meetings, we'll be adding different activities, and that was if you, let me just share this page real quick. So this is our meeting agenda page, and you can see there's start the recording, and if you click through, it takes you to the website, and there's an activity there. There's a mirrored activity, and you can click there, and it'll take you to the development of the mirrored activity. There's the web tour, which we'll be doing next, and then a discussion about how to contribute. And each of these link back to the website, and there's kind of the beginnings of a activity there, and which we'll be kind of fleshing out and developing as well. So with that, maybe we could just start with a quick on our arrival question on how would you like to contribute to the development of the empathy MOOC design project, and just a short introduction to it, and we'll be going into depth a little bit later on that. So for me, I'm working on all aspects of it, recruiting people, kind of A to Z. So I'm pretty much got my fingers in the whole thread of the whole project, and I'm trying to set it up so it's productive and really get sort of a baseline of where everyone is, and actually trying to develop a bit of an activity to kind of find out where everyone is and how they would like to contribute, and sort of lay out the different steps for contributing. So that's just a quick intro for me. Demetra, do you want to just say what you were saying, that you were kind of wanting to find out what the options are? Or...
Yeah, I don't know if I could use my background in digital technologies, if I could just design something. I just don't know my options, but I have a quite good background in the digital world with apps and platforms, social media, and I would be more than glad to help by working on any of these. And also I could help by contributing my experience in digital education, because I teach both online but also brick and mortar, so I would be more than willing. And also if I could just I could form a team, or I could just give the guidelines to a team like you do, so as to make sure that other people understand the procedure and they feel very familiar with the steps and they feel confident to work on this. Then, of course, I'm absolutely open to this. So that's my first.
Okay, first iteration. Sounds good. Ingrid?
Well, I guess what I'm interested in working on mainly is, and from my experience with designing courses, is kind of making sure there's clear intent and what we want to accomplish with it, and then also getting down some objectives or outcomes for the course. And of course, objectives can change once you start. When you first design it, you think this is what you want the learners to come out with. But then as you go through it, you find you tweak them because you find out you didn't quite write them right the first time. And why I find value in that is because this topic is so broad that we can't, we can't meet everyone's needs, and we can't cover everything, especially if we want to do it semi-well. And so having objectives kind of provide a framework or boundaries. So if one way we've used them before is, say someone wants to do an exercise, and that exercise sounds pretty good, but it doesn't really tie to any of the objectives, then you maybe don't do that exercise, or maybe you write a new objective and add another objective which covers that exercise. But every exercise should somehow be tied to some objective. All the content that's in it should also be tied to some objective, but not in a rigid way. Still need to maintain flexibility. So that's mine is just mainly so it's so broad as to help get it where I can get more of a handle on it.
Yeah, the objectives are great. Just to say this is what we want to accomplish. Have we accomplished it? And kind of be clear about that. So I don't have an educator's background. I'm kind of like an activist, seeker type, kind of throw all this, together. So I'm really excited to have more of these, trainers and facilitators involved to bring in those different aspects, especially like objectives, and having clarity about that.
It gets you on the same page too, because then everyone because you may want one thing, I may want another thing, and so then it's kind of like talking about it and coming up so we all understand what's going on.
Okay, well, in an effort for that, I've been creating. So the project has been going about 2 months now. That I've been working intensely on it, and I've created a website with sort of to create a structure for what we're doing. And I thought I could go through the website sort of heading by heading, just to give an overview, and that might give kind of a sense of the direction, and then from there we can start kind of fleshing it out. So does that sound okay? Okay, then let me bring this up. Okay, so this is the Listening Well, a website created with Google Docs, not Google Docs, but Google Sites. So it's a very easy, to create the website. We can share. We can go in and create, share it, so anyone can work on it. Anyone in the team can work on it. This is the home page, and it's culture of empathy training, project development and work website. And this is just a graphic to invite people to take part. And the home page is an invitation for people to take part in the design teams. So inviting people to join, talking about the challenge that we have, polarization, dangerous conflicts, many other problems, and seeing empathy as the solution. So kind of laying that out, and that we need a training for that. That we're inviting empathy advocates, educators, trainers, mediators, designers, social workers, NVC facilitators, etc., to join us in this project and to contribute, and that the overview of the project, sort of the first prototype, first iteration, is that we use the book, the Listening Well book, in like a book club, every week we read a chapter, and then we do empathic listening to discuss the book, and we kind of build the design around that. So it gives us something to work with and to get started with. And then there's some steps here to how to take part, if people can engage, and schedule dates and times, that work. And so we put together the teams. We've got 4 teams going, and some other links for other resources, including, a Facebook discussion group, etc. And I'm just kind of whipping through this. And a sample book club. I'd done this once before with the book. It was a book club around the 12 steps to compassion. And we did 12 weeks, we would read a chapter and then use the empathy circle process to discuss it. So we're learning about it as well as practicing it in every meeting. And here's an interview with Bill Miller. So that's kind of the first landing page. So maybe just get a feedback, like what comes up from just seeing that. Any thoughts so far?
So if I got it right, this is the website you have created, and you have all the material related to what we are working on, and you are calling people, educators and so on, who are willing to form groups like the ones we have formed, and maintain the same goals as we have.
Yeah, so the teams all have the same intention to work on developing the training.
I think it's very interesting. I don't know if there are any guidelines given to all these people who want to form groups, and so as for all group members to feel that they are relaxed and that there is a good atmosphere. And why am I saying that? Because recently I faced a challenge, and this had to do with poor teamwork. And once again, I realized that it seems that people have very hard time when it comes to collaborate with others. They don't know what are the rights and the obligations. So there are things we never do, and there are things that we can say, no, I'm sorry, I might not agree with that, but I should do it in a way that does not hurt the other person, does not humiliate it, but we also have to achieve a goal. I mean, if you have a deadline, you have to complete the task before the deadline. So, and this, I don't know about your experiences, Edwin and Ingrid, but I have talked with so many people, and they told me that when it came to teamwork, most of the times they had a hard time because some people were willing to work more, some others didn't. And there is conflict. There was conflict, and for that, I think that is so essential for people to practice teamwork, not only for the purposes of our group, but taking this experience from our group, they can just use it in their everyday life, in academic, professional, or in their families. What it means to be part of a group, not part of a crowd, not just individuals that team up, but that are just together like a crowd, but what it means to be a team, what makes a number of people work as a team.
So is have sort of a in-service or meeting just about teamwork, like what is the nature of positive, effective teamwork, and have some discussions about that. What are the responsibilities, or what have you, and how do we deal with conflict? If conflict arises, how do we address that? So
yeah, and
yeah.
I think that not only just a theoretical thing, but also some guidelines that we make sure that we follow them. Because let's say that I try to form a team of 5, okay, and at some point I become aggressive, or I just damage the good atmosphere in the team, then everything is, goes to ground zero. I mean, we have nothing. So I mean, we have to check that every group works according to these guidelines. Because if let's say that you choose 5 people, and you say, you 5 people, I wanted to create 5 more groups. You will not be present during the sessions, Edwin. This is what I mean. So how do you know if I'm good at this? And people might not like me, and people might just drop out. And so this will damage your initiative, which is our initiative once we all want to help and make it bigger. So I think it's not only just a theoretical background, but asking feedback from the participants to check how they feel, if they feel comfortable in the team, if they feel free to express themselves, if there is something they want to improve. I think that this is very important.
Mm-hmm. That might be an activity to create, is how to have that discussion about forming good teams. So if you're wanting to start like a prototype of that, you could create an activity if you're like interested in that topic.
I would be, yes. We can talk maybe later, or
yeah.
Okay.
So Ingrid, thank you.
I like the website as kind of as one place to go to find everything that you need to find, or that's what I guess it's going to be. It's kind of organizing the project a little bit, and so I like that, rather than getting maybe separate emails with certain links or something. You can always just direct people to the website. And I guess
it's a central landing site.
Yes.
Helpful.
And was your question about the website?
Oh, just what came up for you so far. What I was gonna do is share a little bit, and then get some feedback, and go through and just get feedback, and
okay. I guess what comes up is how the teams are going to work. What are the teams going to work on, or what are they going to do in order for the course? What's the and how do you see that? What's your vision for how those teams, what they're assigned to, or how everything's going to happen?
Okay, so a bit of just curiosity about the clarity of how the teams will work together, and how they'll all
and what they'll work on.
What will they work on? Well, that's part of the challenge, is how do we, to begin with, we're just going through the course, the book, so it gives us a prototype to take part in, and then I'm trying to figure out how do we work effectively. So we have something we're doing, so we're kind of moving forward in that sense, but then how to create tools and stuff as we progress. So and I think part of the structure of the website is how to how to direct the energies and so let me go into the next section then, which hopefully this is going to start addressing. So the next section is the book chapters. So this is the Listening Well book, and I've created a web page for each chapter. So you can go in under the preface, and there's just a minimal introduction to each chapter with the quote. I'm trying to do it so it doesn't infringe on any copyrights. But so like a quote, the heading, the time. It's only 2 minutes to read this chapter, and most of the I've been kind of timing them, and it's like anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes to read a chapter so far. I created a slideshow for each chapter. So, and the slideshow is just an overview, like a quick summary of it. So at the beginning of the meeting, we can just review the overview and summary, and share that. So it's just a way of refreshing everyone's memory. And so it's just very simple. And there you go through each chapter, and it has the same, sort of same format, chapter 1, for example, and then there's the summary. And I've been showing this at the beginning of the meetings, like if we're, like today we have chapter 3. So we would just go to this slideshow just to show the summary. You remember, this is the model of I added a few little extras, but just, and he mentions, for example, benefits of being heard, benefits for the listener, and that was that. So that's just sort of a tool, bit of a tool to help with the meeting format and introduction to each chapter.
It could also be with the course. I mean, something like that. What you've just developed on the book chapters could be used in the course.
Yeah, exactly. It's so each lesson has its own web page. It could be we could expand on it besides it just being a written text that we're reading. It could be a little video clip that people could watch. So it could be more multimedia presentation too. So we can kind of flesh out, expand on that for the course. So the course would be this website. Each lesson has its own web page, and yeah, like that. Is that what you were meaning, or? Yeah. I mean, depending on how the chapters and the lessons, anyway, I just saw it and I thought it could work. Mm-hmm. Or it could have multi-purposes about it. I learned a lot from just watching a lot of NVC videos on how people using MVC, and that helped me quite a bit with, because it was sometimes hard to see it, if you didn't go to a training or something. Oh, yeah.
Able to see it in person. And, sometimes even anyway, it's kind of nice to also have that example of the way, a good example of how it works. Anyway, I support
yeah, exactly. It's like there's the chapter summary, there's people talking about it, you see how the empathic listening goes, or how the try it, the exercise goes. There could be a feedback mechanism for each chapter. So every component, every aspect of the lesson can be turned into a multimedia, presentation and fleshed mm-hmm. out. And that was what the new lessons section is there's not much here yet, but it's to lay out the set of lessons for the training MOOC and maybe even build on the existing lessons and adding other concepts. Like I would like the training is set up around more of an individualistic empathy, where you as an individual learn these skills. And one thing I'd like to add is the concept of a culture of empathy, that not only are we learning individualistic skills, which is part of a larger culture, but that we think of the cultural whole. And, we can create a lesson, multimedia of text, video, slideshows, graphics, discussion support, sample meetings, exercises, feedback loop, etc. for each lesson. And this is just the very beginning of that. Mimi, I didn't ask you about the feedback for the other part. Did you?
I would like to ask Ingrid. You said, Ingrid, you used the term NVC something. What
Mhm.
exactly is it? A method or is something? I don't know
The
anything about.
nonviolent communication.
Oh, I don't know. Is an approach?
Yes, and it was developed by Marshall Rosenberg, who was also a student of Carl Rogers,
Okay.
and it was really interesting reading Listening Well, because there's a lot of similarities between the Listening Well approach and nonviolent communication, but nonviolent communication is a lot broader. It's a little bit more complicated, and empathy is part of it, whereas Listening Well is really just focusing on the empathy part. And for example, one thing the nonviolent stresses, what they believe is that when you're giving empathy, that if you just say the feelings, guessing at the feelings the other person might be having, that isn't always as effective compared to if you guess the needs they may be feeling. So a need of safety or a need for joy, not joy, but a need for connection. And so NVC's approach is you really have to get at the need to connect. And to me, Listening Well really goes a lot more just for kind of reflecting back, but the feelings. So it's
So,
really
Yeah.
Marshall
Mhm.
Rosenberg, and it's interesting to read his approach.
There's I don't know if do you know Carl Rogers, Mimi? Have you?
yes.
So Carl Rogers was the one who really articulated the empathic listening approach. And then he had all these students. So one of the students was Marshall Rosenberg, who took that and kind of expanded on it. William Miller, was also, I don't know if he ever took any classes with Carl Rogers, but he built on Carl Rogers' work as well and developed the whole motivational interviewing process. There's processes like focusing. I don't know if you've heard of focusing. Yeah. That the founder of focusing, Gene Gelin, was a student of Carl Rogers, and he developed a very much more feelings-based, very felt experience-based approach. And then Thomas Gordon, who Bill Miller mentions, in today's lessons, he mentioned that model from Thomas Gordon. Well, Thomas Gordon was the student of Carl Rogers. So from Carl Rogers, that basic empathic listening approach, people have built this whole tree of processes kind of built on that foundational empathic listening. And like Bill Miller says, it's like he was going back to basics, to just that core foundational first step is practice. And that's what we're trying to address, because by addressing this, it branches off into so many different directions that but this basic core empathic listening process is the component that we're working on, building a really good foundation for this. And Carl Rogers did empathic listening, where he listened to someone in more of a therapeutic approach, just very listening. And what we're doing is we're taking it to the next step, to making it mutual listening. And then from there, it's like, how do we listen? It's like, you can listen for feelings, you can listen for needs. He in this book talks about values. Instead of using the word needs, he's using the word values. So it's all kind of the same thing, that you're breaking down, like, what are you listening to and how do you do a reflection? And that's, for example, Kathy was saying, oh, you're just doing this reflection. I like to just have a very short reflection, but that's one of the things we are going to articulate, is how do you do a reflection and how do you get better at reflecting? So I don't know, I've said a lot there, but I don't know if that makes sense.
So what Ingrid said before was that in this approach, people tended to pay attention to the need, right? Not just to the feeling.
And according to Marshall Rosenberg with nonviolent communication, he believes that when you reflect back, if you can guess what their needs are, it's the other person is going to connect to that more than if you guess their feelings. It's going to get a bigger bang for the buck, basically.
Deeper, right?
Deeper, yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot hard. Mm-hmm. And I think it's kind of true in some ways, and I found it works, but it's a lot harder.
It is. It is difficult. Yeah. I mean, it takes a long time to learn those skills and get better at it. And the thing with the empathy circle, it's quick. You can use it and get immediate, like even in a family or an environment, you can get started, then slowly build and get to those deeper skills and awarenesses.
I really appreciated, Edwin, the way you explained the history a little bit. And I could almost see, I know a lot of people may not be interested in that, but I could see a lot of people also being interested in seeing how all those different programs or approaches are kind of related to what we're trying to do.
And then each one of them has added a different aspect to the core. Like, Carl Rogers was into the reflection component and sort of levels of reflection. Marshall Rosenberg said, well, you see a feeling, but behind the feeling are feelings that people desire, which would be a value or a need. Gene Genlin, he's like, well, let's just follow the felt experience and follow the feeling in your body and just articulate that and see what kind of comes, and you get a reflection on that. And the motivational interviewing is, okay, people are trying to make changes in their life, and by reflecting what their experiencing is and what their motivation is for making a change, you can kind of hear that reflected, and the reflection kind of helps them kind of build energy for making that change, specifically from addiction, in terms of kicking alcoholism or other types of addiction, and so any kind of motivational change. So all of these practices are kind of like focusing on a different piece of the puzzle. And even the mediation too. There's the mediation approach to. Is based on this empathic listening. If you can get people who are in conflict to start empathizing with each other, it's like the conflict kind of starts to dissolve. So, but it all comes back to this foundational empathic listening component, it seems to me. So,
I also I felt NVC missed a little bit of the body, the somatic, that part.
Yeah.
And that's why I like reading and learning about the focusing.
Yeah.
Because the focusing brought in more about paying attention to your body and what are you feeling in your body right now. And so I like there's parts and pieces of it that come together well.
I think what we're trying to, what I would like to add is, one is the concept of a culture of empathy, that it's not just about ourselves, becoming better listeners or speaking more empathically, but that we're really trying to transform society as well and add social structures and systems and, bring it into the political world, that we need a society that's based on these values, and how do we sort of implement that? So that's like the culture of empathy component. And the second part that really resonates with me is the felt experience that you're talking about, that I think that's really a core component too. So I guess I'm identifying, which is a block to empathy, according to Bill Miller. I'm identifying with you. So anyway, those are validating. Validating. Yeah. So I hope those are two aspects that we can bring into the training. One is the culture of empathy, and the second, the centrality of felt and awareness of the somatic felt experience component. So, yeah.
I would like to, after our previous meeting, I was thinking about a few things, and one of them was that when it comes to empathetic listening, we should be a little sensitive with the aspect of nonverbal communication. I don't think that we have discussed this so far, and by this I mean I don't think that I show an empathetic listener when I just sit here having no expression on my face and just repeating the words of the other person. I think that I should send the message to the speaker that I'm here for you, and I do this through eye contact. Okay, this is an online group, so the eye contact, it's cannot be that successful, but also by moving my head or just smiling with the other person, share something funny, or just like me, a little bit like mirroring we did today. Because if you, Edwin, share with us something difficult that happened to you, let's say today, and I see the sorrow on your face, and I'm just I don't think that I'm just an empathetic listener. I should let myself share not your feelings as well. I mean, be part of your feelings. So I think that in the groups, people should start thinking about this aspect as well. And also here comes the element of culture. In some countries, in the southern part of Europe, for example, people tend to be more expressive. They move their hands more. They have more facial expressions. While when you compare to the northern part of Europe, people seem more cold. So if for example, an Italian or a Greek person talks to somebody who comes from Sweden, has a different cultural background, might feel, oh my God, you don't understand. I feel terrible. I have lived in Sweden and I am talking from my experience. While in Greece, for example, people just move their bodies. I mean, this is part of their culture. Yeah, sure. Oh yeah, really? I mean, oh my God, I'm following not just your words, but also your feelings. I'm part of your story. So we have to check, I think, the cultural background of the participants, because some of them might feel that the other person, just repeats, but is not connected to what the speaker said.
So maybe just if I can reflect that. So what I'm hearing you say is that when we do reflection, instead of just reflecting the words, that there's ways we can deepen that reflection, and doing the physical, sort of a physical mirroring somewhat can be supportive for some people, as well as there's somehow we have to incorporate that different cultures find listening and speaking and sort of relating have different ways of doing it, and we need to incorporate that as well.
Yeah, because if Ingrid shares something funny and I'm listening to her, she's laughing. I said, yeah, oh, okay, guys, Ingrid said that she had this and this and this. And then Ingrid says, I'm fully hurt. I mean, no, she can't say that because I didn't give her the temperature. She might need to feel that I have really listened to her. And I'm not just a reporter, you see. And also, I would like to ask if you are thinking about social media and how we could use social media, because I think that nowadays we have very many options, but we should have a clear purpose if we want to have a clear result. So I don't think that it's necessary for us to use all the social media and all the platforms and all the whatever, but we could just narrow it down and say that we have this and these goals for this month, for example, and we're going to work on this and this. We're going to use this and this means, and then we can just change it. So I don't know if one of these means could come from social media, or you think that, we can just stay on the website and this is enough for now. We can have some presentation on the website and no other things. And the last thing I would like to mention is that I feel that many participants might be willing to speak more, but they don't feel very comfortable because they are asked to share things with people who are complete strangers. So I think they would be good for the participants to have the chance to share a bit more of themselves. If they just can write 3 lines, in a paragraph, or send an audio file with something. Because I have felt that people don't feel very comfortable. I didn't feel very comfortable either, but okay, I feel okay now. But everyone has his own way.
Mm-hmm. So I was hearing there is that you're seeing that is there some way we can be more on social media and use social media so have a presence there, as well as how do we create more personal connection between team members so that there's more kind of a personal feeling, more.
Yes, and also give the chance to members when they want to contribute. Let's say that we have a forum, or we can think about it, because I'm just brainstorming right now. If they could come the next day and just add a few of their thoughts that they didn't have the chance to share with us during the meeting. Because, for example, I really wanted to say many things with Lisa when she mentioned this thing about empathy and education, because have a deep interest in that, but I couldn't, and I would love to talk more about this with her. So I think that other people might also feel the need to elaborate on this or that, but they don't have the chance. So what if we gave them a second chance?
Mm-hmm. So we have a sort of a how might we, coming from the design community, is how might we give people more of a personal connection, a chance to dialogue with each other?
Yeah, maybe a forum, or maybe a Facebook group. That where each group member, a Facebook group for us. I don't know. Again, I'm telling you, I'm just brainstorming.
Yeah.
We have to one of them have a clear target. But I think that it would be good if we could stay connected during the week, just discuss this and that, because Ingrid might have said this, for example, about NVC, and I would love to learn more about this. But next week we're gonna talk about other things, and I will never have the chance to ask her, and she might be willing to share her experience with me, or or I might be able to share things from my experience with another member, or there were things that I really wanted to ask Stefan. But
okay, so let me translate that into, so you're seeing the difficulty. There's all these questions you have and these things you'd like to follow up with. So your question is, how might we stay connected during the week and be able to do follow-ups with each other?
Yes, and also after. Yes, right, and also after the group, because we are people here, and it would be nice if we feel that we are a community during these sessions, and even after that.
And it's like, how might we build a sense of community there too? Yeah. Well, I'm writing all these down. We have this in the document, so we're not going to be able to solve them out. But we're brainstorming. We're surfacing these ideas. We have our questions of how might we do this, and we'll keep working on these different aspects. There is social media. We do have a Facebook page. We do have the email list. Personal email list. We have the group email list with everyone involved. So those are some. We can keep iterating and expanding on those. Ingrid, was there any?
Can I just add something? That I have seen that quite often I receive emails coming from other team members I have never met. I don't know anything about them, and I would like to learn, but I don't know anything. So I don't know why I received the message. Some people, yes, but I just don't know. I just receive emails, and I say,
what is that all about? There's a larger email list for all the teams, and if somebody sends an email to that, it goes to everyone. And so there might be, maybe we need something for getting everyone together, or kind of creating connections between the different groups too, or even join, can take part in one of the other teams too, so you can have cross-team connection too.
We could, I mean, what if we had the chance, let's say every week, for those who want to ask a question, it might be in the Facebook group or through an email to another member. I might have a question to ask Ingrid, and a question for Lisa, and a question for Stefan, let's say, for example. And the other members can see my question, can see the answer. Because if Stefan shares something from his own professional experience, this might be something that Ingrid would love to learn about as well. So I think by doing this, we really start to feel that we are part of a community.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you can post to the Facebook group. You can post a question there, or to the larger email list, and people from any team could respond. So that would be just some ideas to get started. We can keep designing others. So it's really, how do we integrate the larger groups together?
Mm-hmm.
And Ingrid, have you done empathy buddy calls with NVC? Have you?
I have before. Mm-hmm. And are you asking me?
Yeah, I'm curious. I thought that might even be a way. I'd been thinking of that as an activity that people can form empathy buddies and have more of a personal dialogue with each other about issues or whatever topics, that is a way of building connections.
Yeah, if you get matched, if you're with a person that you kind of enjoy, or the personalities work together, it can work well.
Yeah.
And you just never know. But
so
I think it can help, and sometimes it can't.
Okay. Well, great. Then let me go through. It's taking a little longer than I thought, but that's good, because we're coming up with a lot of different ideas here. So we're going through the site. There's a section here, the on arrival question. So the questions that we've been asking, they each become a question, and then across the teams we start asking the same question. So you can go through, and this was one which was, what was your favorite block? That was in chapter 5, and people went through and shared their favorite block. So and there was the vision, why empathy is important. So there's a whole set of on arrival questions, and I copy and paste them into one central location for each question. There's a participant, so everyone has a page, as a participant. So that's my page. And this is what some of our mirroring exercises in the other groups. It's always fun to create still images of those, and then the teams I'm in, and kind of different notes. And so we can kind of, build on that, so we can know who else is in the group.
So Edwin, can I interrupt you a second?
Sure.
So are you the only person who's kind of, is involved with all the teams?
Yeah.
Okay.
I did want to, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, that we could open it up. I thought we could have cross, you could join in on another team too. So we could have people be in a couple of different teams or visit other teams. So right now I'm the only person in all of them. What were you thinking in terms?
Oh, nothing. Well, because I was thinking when Dimitra was talking about a need for, I sensed maybe some frustration on her part about wanting to connect more with some of the other members, even in our own team, and not really having that ability, and then also maybe curious about what's going on in the other teams. I'm not sure if I heard that, but so anyway, I was just thinking about, and then I heard her say something about maybe kind of wanting to feel more like, I think you said this already, about more like a community, all the teams together as one community instead of these 4 separate teams that we really don't know anything about. And I concur with her on that. I think it would be helpful, because you do, if someone says something and you get kind of excited about it, but then no means to follow up, it can lead to frustration, and then that frustration can lead to not wanting to be as involved.
So how might we create that community, and how do we have like the follow-up then? And yeah.
I think it would be, first of all, for us to, for each team member to feel, I mean, for each group to make members feel that they are part of the group. So I think that, first of all, we should feel connected, more connected to each other. And this can be achieved by, if we have the chance to ask questions, I mean, to each other when we have this after Monday's meeting. I mean, if I want to ask something, and other people can also see the discussion, in case, as Ingrid said, I might feel excited about something I heard. I really would like to ask more, but I don't have the chance. And so I think it could happen if we have a Facebook group just for us, and then we can just have a bigger for all the teams together. But I think this can come later. First of all, I think it would be good for members to feel comfortable with each other in more friendly terms. As about the frustration, I didn't really understand what, I'm not sure I followed Ingrid very well. At some point I mentioned that if, Ingrid, this is what you had in your mind, this is what you were referring to, that in a group, the leader of the group, let's say, might not do a good work and might make members feel pissed off, and they might leave because he cannot communicate properly to the members. It might be, aggressive, negative, and people might feel, say, okay, thank you very much. I might be busy next Monday, for example. I don't know, were you referring to this or maybe to something else I mentioned?
This is probably a good example of the box, the diagram that was in the chapter today. What I heard you say is that with Lisa, you got really excited hearing her talk.
Oh yeah, you're right.
And that you really wanted to pursue conversations with her. But the way that our current format exists for our empathy circles, that it doesn't permit that. Because,
yes, definitely.
And that can be kind of frustrating. For that you don't have that opportunity to, and there's reasons why, Edwin, why it's kind of designed that way too. And that if a person gets excited about connecting, but then doesn't have that opportunity to connect, that they can get frustrated, and then their needs aren't being met as much by the group.
Yes.
And then that might lead.
Thank you, Ingrid. You're right. This is exactly what I said. Yes, you're right.
Okay. So I don't know, Edwin, even in the way we do our empathy circles, is there any way, even with that, to, because I know you have a reason for doing it the way you do. Is there any way within there to facilitate that, or?
It would be, like more of a freestyle discussion, like having like 15, 20 minutes or something. Okay, we're not using empathic listening, we're just talking, or there's you can follow up with email, or there's also this is the wrong group. We have the training. This is my empathy train. It's the association. There's Finding individual. We have a group, and it's linked from the home page here for communication. So team communication. So we have our group email list. We have our Facebook group. There it is. There's a link from our home page. And that's the Empathy Circles Development Group. We've been using that, but people haven't really been using it. You know, people haven't really made comments and so much. There's various posts there, but there hasn't been a lot of discussion. So yeah, I'm just trying to think of kind of means for having that. Is there those other discussions within the empathy circle? We can bring up, like, you know, you can't respond immediately to what someone says, but when it's your turn to speak, you do, you know, you have to kind of wait to kind of respond. You can have a dialogue. So and that might be part of the empathy, right? It's like, well, you right, it's kind of learning. Part of the empathy is you kind of set some of that stuff aside to focus on the listening, but then, you know, maybe afterwards you want to have a follow-up. So the follow-up could be on the Facebook page, it could be on the via email, or it could be, maybe we can set up empathy buddy calls, or you can, something like that. So just thinking, do any of those kind of work, Mimi?
Yeah. Would you like to repeat again the last one? You said
empathy buddy. So an empathy buddy call is where two people get together and they do mutual empathic listening. So, like, I have an empathy buddy who I get half an hour and I speak about anything I want, and he reflects back what he's hearing me say, and then we take turns, and then I listen to him. So there's kind of that approach that really builds a lot more kind of friendship and intimacy, because you're talking about personal things. It's not recorded and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, okay. So if I want to, I mean, who is eligible for this? I mean, why? How, can I say, okay, Ingrid, you can be my empathy buddy and I can call you? I mean, why should I do this? Because I have an emotional need and I need support, or because I want to share something, or because Ingrid wants to share whatever she likes with me and she needs some more time with another person who is willing to show empathy to her?
Yeah, the one thing is it's just very supportive. It's a supportive process for to learn. It's also an activity in our toolkit. So we can also kind of flesh that out as an activity, and it's a way of getting personal support kind of on an ongoing basis. So I'm just kind of throwing out ideas. We don't need to solve it. We don't need to solve it right now, but
no, I really like the idea.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the idea. It will be very good, but I think that we need to describe it a little more and set some goals so as to say, okay, we're gonna work on this this way.
Mm-hmm. Some priorities. Well, let me finish going through the site then. I'm kind of getting distracted here. So, well, we'll just jot all these ideas down. So we have the participants. There's sort of a to-do, kind of a sorting area here. You know, I'm kind of inviting partners and advisors to help with this. So we're just getting started. There's, for example, at Oxford, there's Jeremy Howick, who has an Oxford empathy program, and he said he would be an advisor. There's Susan Partnow, who does the Compassionate Listening Project. We just did a 3-session workshop with her in Team 1, where she led the group through her training, which is pretty much the same. It's just another version again. You know, it's like NVC and focusing, and compassionate listening is another project. So she said she'd be an advisor, as well as Elizabeth Morrison. And you can actually click through to who these people are. So she has a training that she's developed. This is an interview with her. And she actually got funding through Blue Shield of California, and they do this training, empathy training in the healthcare field. So they all said they would be advisors. So we're kind of lining up more advisors. You know, Bill Miller he didn't confirm that he's going to be an advisor, but there's other people that I know too that was going to line up. So this is just like just kind of stuff that we need to sort. So I kind of throw it all into this section here. And there's a to-do list. We can start forming a to-do list. Like one thing we need to do is create an empathy circle introductory video. And so I throw all the different things that need to be done into this to-do list. And then there's the every team has its, page. So this is the longest going group. I think we started on 4/19 already. So we've been going for a while now. And so, yep.
So how many weeks is it like to go through the book?
Well, sorry, go ahead.
No.
Getting a little lag here. Sorry. Don't want to talk over you. So, so we had initially set 6 weeks, for kind of, commitment to start with. The first teams, we would do 2-3 chapters a week. And then we found there was like too many concepts, and it's turned into just one chapter, 1 week, and it seems to be much more effective to go in depth. So, technically to get through the whole chapter, the whole book is going to take 16 weeks. So, and so that's one of the things we need to see is like, how much time people have for, I'm going to be doing this. This is, long-term kind of project to develop this MOOC. So I'm in it for the long term, but everybody has to see how much time and energy they have for it.
Can I ask two things?
Mm-hmm.
The people we saw before are those who are the advisors, are people who are willing to help with the designing of empathy, toolkit and activities and all these, the people you showed us before? They said they would just help with kind of advising with the overall framework. Susan Partnow said she would help with activities because she has kind of an extensive background. She's been doing like 20 years of this training and has all kinds of different activities and stuff. So she said she would help. So different people have different levels of advising and help. So. And about the duration of the sessions, I might have difficulty in August because it's summer vacation.
Right.
And, so I might be away for 2 weeks or something. As we approach the mid of August, because in Greece, the 15th of August is a very, very big religious day and everything is closed. So before and after that, a week before and after that, people are on vacation and the city is empty and all this. So I might not be here. So I don't know if you have planned for us to pause the classes for a few weeks and then come back in the end of August, or I don't know.
We could plan that, see where everyone else is. There's some, like August, a lot of people are on vacation, or if Lisa couldn't make it today because of a doctor's appointment, and so that's to be expected. Those things come up, so we can sort of figure that out, what works for everyone. So here's the teams. That's the team 1, team 2, 3. That's us. And the Saturday group just formed. So we have a new team. And initially I thought of 6 people per team, but it looks like there's going to be like 7 in team, on the weekends. That's something to think about too, is like how many is good for a group. And then each team has its own, every meeting has its own web page, and kind of resources and, documentation. There's a page here for testing. So we can give, if you want, permissions to be added to edit this site. So people are added. You can add your permission, your account, and then you can go in. You can actually edit the site, and kind of, so like if you're designing an activity, you can go in and have permissions to go through. And so far the toolkit, that's this here, and these are all individual activities that are possible to do. Like we had the activity of mirroring, let's see, mirroring feelings activity, which we did. So here's the kind of the layout of and some description of it, explaining how to do the mirroring activity, some description of it, a video of it, how we actually do it so people can see it, examples, objectives and goals. So every activity would have its objectives, as well as, I guess we could add that to each meeting too. So, to keep kind of fleshing it out, and then have sort of headings, the structured headings that we would do for each one, feedback, so forth. And then there are already some try it exercises that Bill Miller's mentioned. So I created a web page for each one. So this was chapter 5, which was blocks to empathy. So he's got an activity. And so, the title, reflect with a block. It's a chapter 5, try it. Description, go around in an empathy circle. And in this one, someone would speak. The other people in the group each gave the block to empathy, that specific block, and then you can kind of feel like what that block feels like. Then they go around and do an actual, accurate reflection. And we went through and did each of the activity. We did each of the 12 that he mentions in the book, and there was way more than that. And then there was a video. We have the video of each one. So I created a separate video clip to demonstrate each block. And so I think there was, 12, something like 12 blocks that we went through. So that's like a project. Everybody can take on an activity. You can develop the activity and then present it. And then we keep kind of building on those activities and develop new ones. And so these are for each the chapters 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, they have activities that we can kind of flesh out. So, and there's a whole bunch of them, and they're in varying levels of development. And then the last one is the topic of culture of, and these are general topics to expand on, like the concept of a culture of empathy. And especially the feelings one, Ingrid, like you're talking, I think that's central and is often ignored in the centrality of, the felt experience. So, so that's the overall, and we only have about 45 minutes. Maybe we could go into the empathic listening process and just have our discussion about chapter 5, as well as any feedback on, ideas about the chapter. What do you think about that?
Did you have to prepare 5 today?
Oh, no, it wasn't 5, it was 3.
Yeah.
Chapter 3, right? Did I say 5?
Okay. Because I said, I read the wrong one. Okay.
So let me give here. This was the chapter summary, quick chapter summary. So this one chapter is how accurate empathy works. He starts off with a quote by Stephen Covey: "Most people do not listen with the intent to understand; they listen with the intent to reply." And one of the big pieces of this is this model from Thomas Gordon, who's another student of Carl Rogers, who developed the Thomas Gordon training, which is based on empathy. He gives this model of someone speaking turning it into having to have meaning. They turn it into words. The words get heard. The words that are heard turn into meaning, and each are different potential blocks for empathy. Blocks for understanding or where it can go wrong. This was another one that I saw of that model. What the speaker means, they encode what the speaker says, what's heard. Words the listener hears, they decode it. What the listener thinks the words mean. And again, they credit that with Thomas Gordon. And here they show the reflection part, which is what we've been doing. And I made my own little model here that I want to expand on. So I want to make it more personal with faces, and I want to build on that. The other thing that was mentioned was the benefits of being heard. Speaker feels like they matter. Speaker feels heard and understood. And the benefits for the listener: heads off misunderstandings, deepens relationship. Over time, the listener grows emotionally, can see the interconnectedness. And that was it. So that was our overview. And so I want to get some time for our empathic listening in here. So if we jump into that, if someone wants to begin and select who you want to speak to. It looks like Mimi wants to start.
Yeah. Okay. I'd like to talk to you, Edwin.
Okay.
I read this chapter 2 weeks ago, and I was waiting for the time we could discuss chapter 3, because what attracted seriously my attention were some lines. I can quote them. I can read them for you. Where the woman asks the man if he's going to stay home with her, and he says no, whatever. And the meaning was that instead of telling him, I love you and I really miss our having time together, blah, 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 she didn't say anything like this. So the person, her husband or boyfriend, reacted in a negative way because he felt that she was trying to control him, or because he had some bad experiences when he was a kid, blah, blah, blah. And this really attracted my attention because I've seen so many people being in bad relationships just because they cannot speak their mind. And if they do so, the other person understands something completely different. And they don't want to just sit down, have a nice discussion, and just try to communicate and really listen to each other.
Okay, so I'm hearing is this story that Bill Miller shares about how listening works, that it really resonated with you because you see that this happens all the time in relationships, and that people can't get together and just talk out what the issues are.
Right, and instead of listening to the other person, they just want to speak, and they feel good when they speak and speak and speak, and they are not willing to stop and pay attention to the other person, but not only to the words, because more than 90% of communication doesn't have to do with words, has to do with, the nonverbal communication, the body posture and the tone of our voice and how we look at the other person, the facial expression. And it seems that people hide themselves behind the excuse that I don't have time now. And this is the main obstacle that keeps people apart.
Okay, so he has his model of the listening, which is through words, and you're saying that there's a listening too to the feelings that you're seeing in someone, and people are hiding their feelings as well as others are just trying to speak, so they're not taking time to listen sort of to what the person is really saying in terms of their feelings that they're sharing. And you see that block is one of the problems with good communication.
Right, because in order for two people to really communicate, it doesn't matter the doesn't matter that much the kind of the relationship, is these two individuals or three individuals should take the risk to be vulnerable. And I might try to listen to you, but you might never listen to me. So I have to take the risk to try it with you once, twice, sometimes, depending on, you know, the kind of relationship with my have. And if I see that the other person cannot reciprocate, then I probably have to move away and to take care of my heart, you know, because I don't want to feel hurt. But I have to take the risk. Otherwise, I think that people will have just a kind of communication, but not a connection.
So you're seeing like that you need to be vulnerable, meaning that you have to take the time to listen to someone and take the risk that they will not listen to you. And that if they, in the long term, don't start listening to you, that then you have to distance yourself from them.
Yeah, and to add to this, that I'm not listening with my ears, I'm listening with my heart. I mean, it's not something superficial. Okay, I'm listening to your story or your experience, and that's it. I have feelings, you know, your story or your experience motivates me to take some action. This might be to help you, or stay all night listening to something that happened to the other person. I mean, just doing something. So my heart should participate as well, not only my ears, because anybody can use the ears, but what about our heart? I mean, this is the risk. And this is where vulnerability lies, that I have to be open and I have to give the best of myself to the other person, but the other person might never do this. I'm not doing this in order for the other person to reciprocate, but it's like cycling. So in order for the bicycle to move, both legs should be involved. Otherwise, we might not cover long distance.
So you really want to cover a long distance, and to cover a long distance, that you need to connect to people and with each other. And you need to connect from a deeper, not just from these words, what the words are, but connect from what you're calling the heart, which is a deeper sense of connection and openness, and that is, so that's an important component to the empathic listening, is connecting from that heart. And
definitely, I feel fully heard.
Okay. I'll speak to Ingrid then. Yeah, I like that this model, having a model like this is just a starting point to kind of build on. That for me, it's nice to have these visual models to work with, and I'd like to create a model that is more personal and kind of shows those different levels of listening as well, like Mimi is talking about.
So you like models, and especially for some reason I'm getting distracted.
That's fine.
Okay.
I can say it again.
Yeah, do, because I heard, when I got confused a little with the models, I wasn't sure exactly what type of model you were talking about, but
okay, then
I know I sensed you like it. You like models.
Yeah, I like visual models for clarity. So this model of the listening, I find, kind of adds, you know, it doesn't cover everything, but it kind of helps to have these models for me to start being able to talk about different aspects and for developing clarity. So I appreciate that.
So that the model, the Thomas Gordon model?
Yeah, that's what I was meaning.
Yeah, because I could, so it just helps you can use it as a tool to even communicate easier with people.
Exactly. And then I was wanting to expand on this model. I think Mimi is expanding on it by saying, well, it's not just the words where things go wrong, but there's another level of communication happening sort of between those two people that's not covered in the words. And she's kind of speaking to that, and it's not covered in the model. Yeah.
So that when you were just listening to her talk, it gave you another insight into the model, that it's more than just words. It's also about speaking from the heart as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then and then there's also adding components like for the NVC models of well, you can listen to a feeling, but what it's behind those feelings, so that kind of, it's another piece of the model. So to have, to create a model for all these different qualities, I think is something that would be very informative for the training.
Yeah, so you find value in creating a model that kind of puts all these pieces together, and that it could be very helpful and informative for the course for the students to learn from.
Yeah, and kind of building on it sort of step by step. So the model would keep, over the lessons would kind of expand.
So it's like you're starting maybe with the simple model, and then as you go through each lesson, you'll be adding to it. The model, you can add the different components to it, but it's still kind of using the same framework.
Exactly. Yeah, I feel heard. Thank you.
I'll talk with Demetra. So I thought, just from hearing you now talk about speaking from your heart, it sounds a lot like Marshall Rosenberg, who did the nonviolent communication, because his is a lot about speaking from the heart. And the giraffe, which has, I guess, the largest heart of any mammal, that's kind of and he uses the giraffe as a kind of a symbol for NVC, because it has the largest heart, and you're speaking from your heart when you use NVC. And so it's interesting hearing you talk. I think you'd like some of what he writes about. And then I'll stop there.
Ingrid, you got my nonverbal. Okay, so Ingrid, so what you said was that after listening to me talking about speaking from our heart, reminded you of many of the things you have learned about nonviolent communication, Marshall Rosenberg, who used to refer to the giraffe as a symbol, because the giraffe, I hope I got it right, has a big heart. And so that's why he used to connect to deep, he used to connect to communication that comes from the heart. So yes. He used this symbol because whenever he wanted to refer to deep connection that has to do with our heart, not only the words we use when we talk to others.
Yes. And the other thing that, to me, from NVC that comes, that's applicable to this chapter, is they teach a lot about words, judgmental words that we use every day, that create, when we use those words, they create defensiveness in the other person. So it's, for example, in that story you were referencing in the book today about how, I can't remember what the person said, but anyway, that those judgmental words, such as abandonment can be a judgmental word, because it puts blame on the other person, or there's so many of them, I can't think of them right now. But that, when I look at that diagram, and I find that if I can speak without using judgmental words, it really helps a lot for that person to hear what I'm saying. Compared to if I'm speaking, if I'm on the left side of the diagram and I'm speaking and I use a judgmental word, they're going to shut down.
Okay, so you talked about the importance of staying away from using judgmental words, because when we use them, we destroy the potential of good communication we have with the other person. And there are so many words of this kind we can use, and the more we stay away from them, the better the results are. And you also mentioned that these words can increase the defensiveness of the other person.
Yeah, and there's what surprised me when I started looking at the list of all the words is like there are words there's some words you know are judgmental right away, but there's a lot of words that people use all the time, and I did too, that you don't normally at first think of them as being judgmental. And so it was really helpful to see this list, because it was like, oh my gosh, yeah, I get now how if I say that, then that other person isn't going to hear me. And it's a word I wouldn't normally guess.
So it seems that the moment you came across this list of judgmental words, helped you very much to realize that it would be good for you to avoid some of them, because you might hurt or just annoy other people. And even when we don't realize it, we use words of this kind, and the result is not the one we would like to have in communication.
Right.
So it was really helpful for you.
Yes, I feel fully heard.
Great. Can I say something to this point, or I'm not allowed to say?
You can say it. If you want to speak back to Ingrid, you can speak to her and she'll reflect back what you're saying.
Oh, actually, I would like to talk to the team. I mean, okay, I just can't have to talk back to Ingrid.
Mm-hmm.
No? Okay.
You can talk back to Edwin.
Or you can talk to whoever you want, yeah, and you'll get a reflection on it. You can say anything you want to either of us.
Oh, first of all, it's not my turn, right?
It is your turn. It's your turn now.
Oh, it is. Sorry, I'm a little tired now. Okay, so I will talk back to Ingrid and say that I really find your comment very thoughtful about judgmental words, and it's true that even without realizing it, we might use words and even facial expressions that make the other person feel embarrassed or find himself in an awkward position. However, I think that, okay, let's say that we are friends, and at some point I use some words because I have a bad day, whatever going on in my life, and I use some words that are not the most proper ones. I mean, are they that strong that they could hurt our relationship? I mean, if we are truly connected with the other person, or let's say not truly connect, what truly really means? If we have a relationship with a person, we were friends, partners, and we get along together for a long time. Even if we make some mistakes, what I'm thinking is that how much understanding can we show to each other, because we are human beings and we cannot monitor all our words and all our emotions and be perfect every day. Can we do this? Should I always point the finger at the other person? Ingrid, yesterday you said this word, it was judgmental. Goodbye. I'm just making a silly example, okay, just to exaggerate. But what if we try to look for something deeper than the words, which of course, should be avoided, no question about it. So these were the things that came to my mind while I was listening to your thoughtful comment, with which I fully agree.
So,
I'm sorry, I said a lot.
No,
sorry.
You're questioning. First off, I sensed some frustration in that initially, before you even started talking with me, because you wanted to talk about this with the whole group. Instead of maybe just speaking to one person, you want to kind of put it, I'm guessing you want to kind of put it out there to everyone. And then when we kind of went through it and you figured out, well, that's not an option. And so then you went ahead and asked me, and what I think I hear you saying is that you're questioning if, when you're with someone that you really know well, and a partner or whomever, but it's someone you're connected to, do we really need to be that careful with the words we use, or if we use a word that might be judgmental or the other person may hear wrong, that the other person would need to have, they should have more understanding to know that we do that at times. You know, we're not perfect, and we mess up at times, and that to just be able to see that but work through it. So tell me if I...
Yes, absolutely. Because if we are friends, Ingrid, for a few years, and I wear something that you don't like, you might say, "Oh, Dimitra, what you're wearing is silly." Okay, but we might laugh. If you say this today, I might say, "Oh my God, she emptied me," for example. Okay, because our relationship is not strong enough to just stand something like this. But I think that the more connected we are, the more we can go through these words, even though we shouldn't, of course, overdo it for sure. But we can just say, okay, I mean, she said something. I know that she loves me. I mean, come on, it's just a word. I mean, who cares about it after all?
But you feel the more connected we are, that you are with another person, it's almost like there's more forgiveness. But I'm not sure if forgiveness is the right word, but there's kind of, the more connected you are, it's not taken as seriously. You know, you can maybe do it more, it's more lighthearted, and it's not as harmful or hurtful to the other person.
Definitely, because the more you know the other person, the more you recognize the intentions of the other. So you know that it's a teasing or something. I mean, come on. Okay, I mean, it's fine. We're not robots that we should be programmed to use these words, these expressions. And if you do that, oh my God, get out of my life. I don't want you anymore. And the last thing I would like to say was that, and this is a comment for the whole group, is that I feel that people feel very uncomfortable when the others don't agree with them. But I feel that disagreement is an absolutely healthy reaction, unless I try on purpose to humiliate the other person, to make them feel embarrassed or whatever. Other than this, we can disagree and say, okay, I totally understand your point, but allow me to have a little different approach because of my experiences that are this and this and this, and I see things a little different. So it's fine if we disagree. It's okay. It's normal. Yes.
So it sounds like a rigid approach is something that you don't like very well, where it's like these rigid guidelines about if you say certain things, that then it's not going to work or something like that. That's doesn't always work for you, that you prefer a more flexible thing, that sometimes, yes, you can mess up and say with a word or say something, but still, if you have a really good connection with someone else, you're going to maintain that connection with them. Mm-hmm. And then also, you also, within the group, it sounded like that it was important to you that we can still have different opinions, and we don't all have to agree on the same thing. We can have different approaches as well as different opinions on what we're doing.
Right, as long as we respect the other person and we don't want to harm anybody, we don't want to humiliate anybody. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. And that it's important, really important to you that within the group that not harming and not disrespecting other team members, that really helps the group as far as being able to stay connected with each other.
Definitely. Thank you, Ingrid. I feel fully heard.
So I guess I'll speak with Edwin.
Okay.
And it's interesting. My husband and I practice this he practiced it quite a bit, and I feel very fortunate for that, because when Demetra was talking about when you're with another person and you say something and you hope you have enough connection there that, you know, you can maybe say something that's hurtful, but you can reconnect. And I find that with my husband, that's easy to do. We can reconnect easy because that trust is there. And also, like, I can say, I'll come back and say, you know, I know that I said this and it may have sounded bad, but it's easier to reconnect. But with people that I'm not as close with like that, it can sometimes be harder for me to reconnect with them because they don't always know what kind of the process of how my husband and I go about doing it. And it's kind of foreign to other people sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Ed.
so you're sort of partially building on what Mimi said and about the trust that you have in your relationship. You feel fortunate that with your husband you actually practice empathic listening, I believe you were saying.
Yes.
And that there's a level of trust. And if there's a break or something in the relationship, you can come back and you can sort of repair it. And you feel fortunate having that relationship to be able to have that connection. But with other people, it's a bit more challenging to have that same level of trust, and if it may be more easy to kind of break the relationship because people don't know who you are or don't have that deeper background understanding of who you are.
Right, that's you got it. And I guess part of that too might be me being more vulnerable with people who I don't know as well. You know, I guess because I think you've talked about that too. But it may be a little bit harder for me to show what I'm really feeling and thinking and what my experience is with other people.
So you're seeing one aspect of why you may have that difficulty is you're not as vulnerable and open with showing so your true feelings, and that might be a part of that.
Yes. And like just this weekend with my husband, he was, and I can't remember the exact story. I need to start writing these down because it's always kind of fun. But we were supposed to go somewhere and he was on his phone. And it's kind of he'll sometimes be on his phone longer than I get irritated sometimes when he's on it because it's like we're ready to go and he's on his phone. And I said something like, and of course he was still on his phone, and I said something like, you know, when are you going to be done with the phone or something? But my tone of voice was a little, you could tell I was irritated, and I could have said it much more in an NVC or an empathic way and said, you know, I would like to leave within the next very soon, and will you be ready by then? You know, I could have said it something like that. But anyway, so I said it with this tone. My words weren't so bad, but my tone came off negative. And he joked with me afterwards. You know, his response was kind of more lighthearted, and it was easy to hear his joking about it. And, you know, there wasn't any hard, you know, it was perfect. A perfect way to address it.
Mm-hmm. I said, so you're given an example of a rupture in the relationship that your husband does tend to be on the phone longer than you would like when you're about to go somewhere. So you made a comment about it, but within the comment, the frustration that you were feeling came across, and that his response was just to make a joke about it and not to take it so personally. And you just feel that was a nice way of him handling that situation. And you're also having an awareness that, you could have maybe said it differently in a more, you know, in a more empathic way of, you know, bringing in like what you were feeling, what you were needing, or something like that. So it could have been kind of framed a little bit different. So you're kind of aware of that too.
Right. Because he could have gotten defensive with me. Mm-hmm. You know, he could have taken it, you know, a different way. So I feel fully heard.
Yeah, so he could have
Thank
taken
you.
another way, gotten frustrated, and you have gratitude that he handled it the way he did.
And that was something minor.
Yeah, these little
it
things.
was nothing.
These little things can blow up. I'll talk to Mimi then. So just a short one. Yeah, it's the difficulties of relationships, and how do we be empathic, and that's what we're trying to address in this training. Develop a training to give people tools for how to relate with each other, more empathically and effectively.
Mm-hmm. So what you said was that you referred to our overall discussion about difficulties we find in relationships, and you would really like to find and provide the tools people can use us to find solutions to their problems difficulties they might face in their everyday reality.
And what I see in the course, what we want to develop, is this practice of the empathy circle or empathic listening, that everyone gets a chance to express themselves, and before we kind of move on to the next person, that they feel heard to their satisfaction. So this basic, there's a few, rigid rules to this, and one of them is you speak, you get heard, and we don't move on until the next person speaks. And with this basic, it's pretty amazing I find the effectiveness of it, in terms of kind of practicing listening, developing skills.
Mm-hmm. You feel that our decision to stick to some rules and some rigid rules can really increase the effectiveness of our empathy circles. And one of them is that we never move on before each speaker feels fully heard. And this makes you feel that this gives you great satisfaction that at least one goal is always served during our sessions, and at least one. The speakers feel satisfied that they have been fully heard by their listener.
And there's a lot of other kind of benefits that come out of that in terms of sort of a sense of fairness. Everyone gets heard. Everyone has their time to share. Everyone feels heard to their satisfaction. And in conflict mediation, I found this like a core practice for mediating conflict in my family, for example. You get everybody together, and that you have this turn taking, and you kind of have this basic structure that you stay with.
Okay, so elements like fairness and the time each member has to communicate their thoughts, and also the feeling of satisfaction they get every time they make their point and they feel fully heard. All these elements, you find all these elements absolutely essential when it comes to conflict mediation, and you experience this even in your family, and you find them really meaningful.
And then one thing I found is that this is like the basic kind of training wheels. If you're like on a bicycle, you got the training wheels. And there comes a point where it's like the training wheels fall off and people start dialoguing with each other, but they sort of internalize the underlying, listening. You don't even need to take turn taking anymore. It's already kind of internalized. And then you don't even need that structure anymore, but it's just helpful at the beginning to learn that structure and have it as a fallback.
Okay, so you can relate the procedure, the steps we follow in our empathetic listening to the training wheels we have when we learn how to cycle, and you feel and you believe that after some time we will not need to follow this structure that closely, because the procedure will be internalized and we'll be able just to communicate by following these rules without thinking about them. So this will be an asset for all of us.
Yeah, and I've seen it in my family, my extended family, where we have these empathy circles, and then it kind of falls away, the structure, and people are listening and dialoguing to each other, but then a conflict comes up. And it's like people start getting upset. They get triggered. They get, they get into a fight mode. And then it's like, let's go back to the structure. One person speaks, one person listens. And so it's like this fallback position you always have, that somebody can say, we need to go back to that structure. And then it kind of helps to reconnect and kind of create the basic structure until you can let go of it again. So that's just the dynamic that I've seen.
Okay, so you feel as this structure operates like a first aid kit. So whenever people might keep discussing about this or that, but when a conflict arises or is about to arise, we can always go back to the structure and follow the steps again till serenity and peacefulness is really established.
There's almost like a sense you can feel everybody click into it. There's sort of a shift in energy that I've noticed in my family, it took an hour and a half sometimes or longer for that to happen. And so anyway, that's just a little bit of a background into and then with our training, we're slowly learning how to listen, step by step, add components. How do we hear more from what you're calling the heart? How do we be more aware? How do we sort of deepen that listening? How do we differentiate what people are saying so we can see the feelings they have, and what are the feelings behind those feelings, and what are the needs or values behind those feelings? So, but this is I find this a very good sort of starting point.
So what you believe and what you say is that the more we practice this circle, the more able we are to dig deeper into the feelings of others and even the needs of others. So the communication, the connection becomes deeper, and we can really let our heart participate in this discussion, not only words being involved. And even when in your family you see kind of conflicts, after some time things can also go back to normality, and you can just enjoy being together,
relating.
Relating, yes.
Yeah. So, okay, well, that was it. Thank you. I feel heard. And that was our 2 hours. So I'd want to go into some other things, but I see that doing that tour, takes some time. So kind of learning by doing. So the next week is chapter 4. Anything else for next week? I think we'll just
do you think that we might talk about nonverbal communication? Do you think that you could just bring it forward?
You can bring up anything you want in the discussion, and it's actually one of the chapters is about nonverbal communication. So if we follow the chapter, in the dialogue here, you can bring up anything, but we will follow the chapters. So we want to cover the chapters, one after the other. So,
and are we going to talk more about the initiatives each one of us would like to take?
Yeah, next time. I think we can do that next time. We'll go. I had hoped to do it today, but I think next week we'll go through that. Like lay out what are the potential ways of being involved, and how would you like to, what projects would you like to take on? So. Was there anything, Ingrid, did you have?
Well, it kind of goes back, I'll try to be quick, to I'm wondering if there's any value in, because there's empathetic listening and there's discussion in general. And I think some of what Dmitry was talking earlier in the session about was a need to have maybe a little bit of discussion.
Okay.
Maybe after after our listening circle.
Okay.
Possibly. So I'm wondering if that's a way to help address those kind of loose ends that happen during the empathic listening circle, is to have 5 minutes of discussion.
Oh, 5 minutes. How much? The question is how much discussion time?
Well, I don't know. And it may be.
Might not be enough, right?
10 minutes, 15, 20. We can try that next time. At the end, we'll kind of.
I think that, I'm sorry, Ingrid. Did you
Go ahead.
make it? Okay. I think that I really believe that we should feel like a team, and we would have the chance to ask things to each other that might not be part of the empathetic listening necessarily. And also, I think that it's good for us not, if we could have less, how can I say, let's take less turns, but have some time to discuss, maybe 20 minutes, where we just want to talk about how we felt, because each one of the participants might have talked about something that really interests us, and we want to talk about this. So I think that, yes, time for discussion would be necessary for us.
Mm-hmm. Were you saying 20 minutes?
I mean, what if we try 10 minutes and see how it goes? We trial and error. We can understand better what works.
So next time we have 10 minutes at the end to do kind of freestyle discussion, whatever you want to talk about, without any kind of structure or rules.
Yeah, even though I think that 10 minutes is nothing, because if a person speaks for 1 or 2 minutes and the other person wants to answer back, I mean, 10 minutes is nothing. But I mean, we can see.
We can try it. If we want to expand on it, we'll expand on it next time. We'll put it on the schedule, 10 minutes. So for closing, what is, how do you feel now, and what's the physical motion for it? So mine is kind of like this. If we want to do a mirroring, kind of a big stretching. And you can make a sound too if you got a sound. So that's the mirroring. Yep. So Ingrid, you got one?
No. But I feel I'm trying. It's more like an open. I feel open.
Like that.
Yeah.
Mirror that, Mimi, until you feel seen. It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Mimi?
I think that I feel excited as usual and very happy. So I think it would be like a flower that blossoms like that. I mean, yes, I like this, very happy. I'm really willing, and I'm looking forward to the day and the moment when we start, creating things together. And so the moment where we start to transform all this into some activities or actions we can share with others, and all this empathy culture can,
Bloom.
be done. Yes, more and more. Right. Yes, please.
Okay, well, very good. Then next week we'll continue on chapter 4. And we'll have 10 minutes at the end for freestyle. Just talk, open discussion.
Okay.
Sounds good.
See you then.